you know mentally, intellectually what's happening, and it feels almost still surprising to the senses that this is happening in real life.
Welcome back to, I don't know, Earth.
Thank you.
How has life been since returning home? And I mean, are you recovered?
Life has been action-packed both in space and since returning home. Really, the mission didn't stop at Splashdown. We spent the first few days doing a lot of research, data collection for the scientists here on Earth. We've also been, doing some time with media, and then we were just in LA doing our initial debriefs and data review with the SpaceX team. So it's been fantastic already seeing, a lot of the lessons learned, but there's going to be a lot more to come as the researchers really piece together the full story.
I want to talk about, before the launch, what you felt during the launch. So if you could walk me through, I mean, you guys faced delays not only with the mission, but then when it actually came down to your launch date, what was it like to deal with those delays? And then tell me how you felt during the actual launch into space.
I think we knew that it was important to we prioritize safety. And so we were going to wait for the right weather window. We were going to wait till the entire mission, vehicle, hardware, software operations were all ready to go. So we were, happy to wait for the right opportunity, and we would launch when we were ready. And so I think, even as we were having those delays sitting in Florida, that was certainly at the forefront of everyone's mind. No one had launch fever or was going to launch us until it was the appropriate time. And I think we just worked hard to keep our heads in the game, to stay focused, keep reviewing things, stay healthy. Those were big objectives because it was important that we were healthy in space in order to do things like the spacewalk.
Right.
So that was forefront of our mind. And even like sitting on the launch pad, I think it was great. The whole team had come together for this wonderful weather opportunity that we saw. And sitting on the launch pad, we moved through the first T0, called off that opportunity because of a storm cloud kind of hovered over the pad. And it was a great call by the SpaceX team. I think one of the strong memories I remember in that moment, sitting in the spaceship, sitting on top of the rocket, was really thinking through what that mission control team is going through at this moment. I had been a mission director for the launch phase of flight previously, sitting in mission control. And so I was really thinking through, all the conversations that they are probably having right now, what the emotion is in the room, and what they're working through to make sure to make the best calls for us. And they ultimately made a perfect call to launch us at the time they did. And then we got into flight and had a fantastic ascent profile, and we're thrilled to get on orbit.
Yeah, what was it like to be on the other side of that coin and actually the one, having those conversations with your crew?
I think it was fantastic. I feel so grateful to have been on both sides. I think it, only served to be, informative for me personally. And I think it was, we were talking through in the spacecraft, these are the flight rules that they're looking at, this would be like this kind of weather opportunity. Here's the people that are playing in this moment and making these decisions. And so I think for me, it was just really eye-opening and interesting to experiencing it, and hopefully served as an additional data point for the larger team. And I think it'll be so fascinating to take that experience back on the other side of spaceflight, back to being on the ground team at SpaceX.
Well, the launch windows happen to be, in the middle of the night. I know a lot of people that stayed up to watch, which you had, over probably 1.5 million people watching the spacewalk between the two streams, which is incredible. But a lot of people here on Earth were, kind of tired, maybe had to go to the bathroom. You guys had a lot of delays. What was it like dealing with, just being a human, having to like sit there for so long?
I think it was fine. We knew what we were getting into with this. We knew that our launch window was in the middle of the night, so we had sleep shifted days and days in advance. So we were ready physiologically for this launch window timing, for the EVA timing, for the timing of awakeness that we would have in space. And, that was certainly really thoughtfully prepared going into the mission. So we, certainly weren't caught off guard by needing to be awake in the middle of the night or anything. And we're happy to do it for what it gave us, which was, a decreased MMOD risk and things like that. More ideal, like, windows for the EVA. There were certainly reasons for choosing to launch at that time.
But once you're in there, the door is closed. You can't say like, "Oh, I need to go to the bathroom." Like you're in there, right?
There were certainly like plans for whether if we were gonna slip to certain T0s to provide bathroom opportunities, for example. So that is absolutely something that the team thinks about.
Okay. I don't think I'm cut out for it. Um, Tell us about, if you could just describe, which, probably words don't do it justice, but what it's like to launch on a Falcon 9 rocket.
It is the ride of a lifetime. It was absolutely incredible, blew me away beyond my wildest imagination. I think, starting from that first countdown, you're in the last 10 seconds and you're it's happening. You are about to launch into space. It's incredibly surreal. And then all of a sudden you just start feeling yourself lifting off vertically from the ground, and it feels almost, mentally, intellectually what's happening, and it feels almost still surprising to the senses that this is happening in real life. And then, quickly the G forces start occurring and you feel that pressure, GX, in your chest, increasing until you hit main engine cutoff. And then you have a moment where you're thrown into your straps, and then the G forces start coming again as you get through the second stage. And that one's a little bit more slow of a progression. But again, you hit pretty significant G forces by the end of it. And then finally you hit SECO, or second engine cutoff. And that moment, you hit weightlessness, and all of a sudden you go from these G forces pulling your cheeks back and feeling that pressure in your chest, almost like there's, a small elephant standing on you. And all of a sudden your arms just start lifting up and you're floating in space. And I think that just going through that wave of physical sensations while you're simultaneously hearing a lot as well. You're hearing the rocket, and you're hearing, different sounds as different pieces of the motions go through, and there's different phase transitions of the rocket itself. I think was just really fascinating to experience, really the full picture, all of the different sensations.
Oh my gosh. I that sounds so incredible. I was lucky enough to do a 0G flight, and I'll admit I got pretty sick. Definitely, fulfilled the vomit part of the comment. Did anyone feel sick? Did you feel, any discomfort, or was your adrenaline just flowing?
During the launch phase, adrenaline was flowing, felt no discomfort. I certainly experienced space adaptation in those like initial hours on orbit, day on orbit. But that is normal. That's super
Yeah.
normal. One of the reasons we do research in space, and really impressed upon me even further the importance of gathering the data that we were doing by performing over 40 science and research experiments on this mission.
Yeah, we've heard of that, space adaptation syndrome, but if you could describe it to someone who, not a lot of people will get the chance to feel that. So like, what do you feel?
It happens. There's all sorts of different sensations that happen. And so, there are fluid shifts that happen when you stop having the force of gravity pulling on you. So that means that fluids shift more to your head. It can make your head feel bigger for a while. It can, create headaches. And then you can also, some of the physiological things people experience are like your vision can start changing. You can have intraocular pressure changes. And then there's also the space motion sickness part of that. Everything that the sensations that you can imagine from even motion sickness on the ground, though there's not a strong correlation between getting motion sickness on the ground and getting it in flight. Some of those just the symptoms are similar, the hot flashes, the nausea, the vomiting, all of that spectrum of that happens on the ground too can happen in flight. And so, I think those are just a small handful of the things that start happening as you start adapting to the space environment. But the neat thing is that, you start adjusting over time and these symptoms go down, and eventually space feels just like life does here on Earth. But it just takes your body a little bit of time to adjust, since, we weren't born into a zero gravity environment.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Uh, what was going through your mind when Jared opened the hatch for the spacewalk?
I think that will be a memory that is imprinted in my mind for the rest of my life. It was awe-inspiring. I think first of all, upon starting to crank the hatch, immediately felt, the sensory changes just from the pressure changes in the environment. A cold rushed over me. Um, and I saw the darkness of space through the hatchway as you began to pull it open. And I think that it was just so remarkable to see, the vastness of our universe kind of out an open hatchway while we're sitting inside of it. It really impressed upon me how you know stark outer spaces, and at the same time how incredible it is that humans have worked together to do such difficult things like exploring outer space in this moment. So I was just really, really impressed, and it was a really profound moment.
Yeah, I mean, and to be, the first people to test out these new spacesuits, was there any maybe concerns, or did you just have, I mean, they look so kind of almost minimalist compared to like past spacesuits.
There were no concerns. I felt, honestly, the entire EVA almost felt like a simulation. It just felt like it worked like clockwork, and it worked like we had practiced time and time again. We were incredibly well prepared by the SpaceX team, both from the operations standpoint of like practicing and getting ready for this, but then also from a suit perspective. We had worked in the suits time and time again. We had gone into a vacuum chamber here on Earth in these flight spacesuits. So we had experienced these physiological changes that happen when you go to a vacuum environment protected by your spacesuit, experienced it firsthand on the ground, experienced firsthand that these suits kept us safe, and gone to the other side. So when we wore them in space, we just had utmost trust in the entire process.
Was the vacuum on Earth any different than the vacuum in space? And I feel like for us here on Earth, it's hard to really wrap our mind around this idea of being in a vacuum. Can you try to like put words to it?
I think that it actually had a tremendous amount of similarity in space and on the ground, which is a testament to the value in that ground experience and ground testing. I think there are certainly physiological changes you experience. So there becomes a quiet as we went down to vacuum. There is kind of a cold sensation that comes over your body as you get closer and closer to that vacuum state. There is, there's as the pressure changes are happening, you're continuing to clear your ears and Valsalva as your body experiences that. And then, as you come back up to a full pressure, you're in this spacesuit, this pressurized spacesuit. You're moving as you need to, but the spacesuit is just it's your lifeboat. This is your personal shaped spaceship around you, keeping you safe. And so you are treating it with all the care that you would treat your entire spaceship, and it's providing you all the functions that a spaceship provides to keep you alive. And so just experiencing that whole process was very similar between the Earth and space, but really, pretty surreal to know that, there's this much space between you and vacuum.
Rewatching the Polariston spacewalk just gives me goosebumps, and it's particularly interesting to see how minimalistic this EVA suit looks compared to suits of the past. In fact, SpaceX is really good at trimming the fat, leaning out designs, and you can see that with their Raptor engines as well. In fact, I haven't taken it out of the box yet, but I have a treat for us to look at, speaking of the Raptor engines. Oh my gosh. Wow. So SpaceX isn't flying with the Raptor version 3 yet of their engine, but I have a mini version of that thanks to Space Rocket Lab. And here's an even smaller version, or a miniature mini. So I've seen a lot of 3D printed rocket models, but this is the first Raptor V3 engine that I've seen. Luckily, this version came pre-assembled, but let's see what it looks like. Space Rocket Lab makes all kinds of designs, including the Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, the Orbital Launch Pad, Starship, Mechazilla Launch Tower, Moonship Moonlander, Ariane 5, and more. I also agree the prices are very reasonable, and just look at how high quality this is. I've had a lot of 3D printed stuff sent to me that usually there's like threads or fuzz, and this is actually very impressive. And here's little V3 Junior. One thing that I think stands out about these models is although they're 3D printed, they have manual post-production with painting and sanding, and that's why you have such a high quality finished product. Actually, the reason that I specifically requested to get this model was because of this funny rebuttal by Gwen Shotwell. ULA's Tori Bruno called these partially assembled, and Gwen posted a picture of the V3 engine firing, showing that actually, no, it's just a really lean design, and that's why SpaceX is pushing the boundaries more than anyone. They are rapidly iterating, and this is why we love them. It's almost like Raptor went on Ozempic. So I was sent 2 of the Raptor V3 models. This one is 1/18th scale. This one is 1/10th scale, and apparently it's the best scale model that Space Rocket Lab has ever made. You can purchase a Raptor model and explore other options by clicking the link in the description of this video. You can also get a 15% discount using the code Ellie15.
Ultimately, all 4 of you didn't go out. How did you guys decide who was going to stay in and who was going to go out? And what did you do during you were, during the spacewalk?
So Kit and my job was to provide support for the EV crew members. And so that meant, monitoring telemetry. It meant supporting the umbilical management. So making sure that there weren't kinks, wasn't getting tied around something that could really affect the crew members. We were able to have good visibility on, for example, the hatch seals. And so could provide backup support and be eyes and ears for that 3-dimensional environment that our crewmates were working in. And so, I think ultimately it was a team effort to work through the spaceship, and not just the 4 of us in the spacecraft, but we were supported by this fantastic team in mission control, tons of eyes and ears on us. And it was just really, really neat to see everyone work together to accomplish this.
Oh yeah. And how did you guys decide who would go out?
I think that was a decision that was made early on, and I wouldn't say there were certainly reasons that went into it, but there's not a lot to go into there.
Yeah, there was no flip of a coin.
No.
What is your overview effect takeaway as one of the 2 women to ever achieve this altitude?
I think for me, I think when I think about the altitude, I think what it took to accomplish that on the part of the SpaceX team. I really think about what an incredible team effort it was to get to that point. This was the furthest a Dragon spacecraft has ever gone. This is the furthest humans have gone in, many, many decades. And it took some remarkable engineering and work by a large team of people to make this possible. So I think when we hit that point, what I was really thinking about was what a big moment this was for SpaceX and for human spaceflight. And that really, we hope it's only a short matter of time before that record gets broken again. And there are people venturing even further amongst the stars, bringing us back to the moon, for example.
Talk about the overview effect. I mean, we hear it from so many astronauts, this sort of, common phenomenon of not seeing borders, wishing that everyone could kind of see the view from space. Did you get that?
I think for me, what was really stood out to me in terms of the overview effect is, absolutely the Earth was stunning. Saw, I think my first glimpse of the Earth, I just gasped and remarked, wow. Seeing our Earth out the window was absolutely beautiful. But I think the most pronounced overview effect type moment I remember was actually, coming back towards Earth, and that like final hour. I remember feeling this emotion of warmth, seeing our Earth, knowing that we were going back to this place that is so hospitable, so diverse, from both a nature perspective and a human perspective. I think, seeing what Earth creates from the diversity of nature, the oceans, the trees, the auroras, the lightning, the clouds, all of this is encapsulated in this beautiful sphere. But then on top of that, there's this humanity that also provides such warmth. There are humans full of love that are capable of doing such incredible things, like dancing, music, sending people into space, building buildings, building cities, and the fact that Earth holds all of this humanity. I think between the nature and the humans that we were coming home to, I think that beauty was really what stood out to me.
Well, I'm sure you missed your family too. How was, juggling that communication and sort of were you able to talk to them a lot?
We were super fortunate. I think, just like I talked about in our book Kisses from Space, where love can overcome any distance. I think I experienced that firsthand on this flight. Even when we were at this high apogee, this high altitude, I was fortunate to be able to connect with my family through Starlink. Starlink provides great opportunity. We were testing out Starlink as a part of this mission, and it exceeded expectations. We were able to several times across the mission perform video calls with our families, and so that enabled two-way video communication, just as if we were on the Earth. It was incredible, and to be able to see my kids, see my husband, and talk to them, hear about their days, show them around the capsule, what it felt like to float around, and bring them along for that journey. It was, I was so impressed by what this laser communication is capable of, and really grateful for the connection with my family, even from this really far altitude.
Wow, that's incredible. How did the X-ray experiment go?
The radiation experiment that stands out to me most in space was these light flashes. So when we were in this high radiation environment, one of us in particular experienced like fireworks when they closed their eyes, and this is something that's been reported by astronauts before, but it was really remarkable when we were in this high radiation environment. You could just see like fireworks right and left, and so we were gathering a lot of data on that in that environment, and so we'll be super curious what the researchers bring back on that.
Everyone wants to know how do you work the bathroom situation in a Dragon? What can you tell me about it?
I think that going to the bathroom in space is a very functional thing. I think that, you use a fan to help, provide a suction for the liquid so that they don't go all over the spacecraft. And the neat thing about space is you have 3 dimensions to work in. So you really get to use all aspects of the spacecraft to orient yourself and use the bathroom. And honestly, it works super smoothly.
Yeah, I feel like that you guys must know each other really well now.
Knew each other really well going into space. We had worked for years to build a strong crew cohesion. We had gone through a lot of training environments, for example, climbing Mount Cotopaxi together, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable with each other, doing things like skydiving, facing high dynamic, high consequence situations, and making sure that we had the team environment to work through any moments together. And I think what all of that training did for us was build a really strong foundation that we absolutely leaned upon in space.
Yeah, when I interviewed Jared, he was talking about how there's sort of like a bittersweet moment about all of that training and spending time together once the mission's over. Do you feel any of those feelings of, it being bittersweet?
I think the primary feeling I feel is just enormous gratitude. This was the experience of a lifetime, and learning, being a part of this team, both going through the pre-flight training together over the course of 2.5 years, the privilege of flying to space with them, as well as, with this team on the ground. And then being on the other side, I think we learned a tremendous amount. We hope that, what was accomplished through this mission contributes to the future of human spaceflight. And I think I feel enormous gratitude to be a small part of that.
Tell me what the sleeping arrangement was like. Did you guys, what did you sleep in and how did you set that up?
We have sleeping bags in space. So SpaceX, flies sleeping bags. This is very similar to how lots of astronauts have slept before. And you can really sleep anywhere, which is super cool. Just like I was saying earlier, you've got 3 dimensions to work with. So all of these surfaces that aren't available on Earth in a 1G environment, you get access to in space. So for me personally, I slept kind of oriented in my seat bucket. I would use pieces of my seatbelt to just kind of hook me in so that I didn't float away overnight. And then like snuggled up in my sleeping bag. And the funny thing was, by morning, my legs would have kind of oriented up toward the ceiling, and I definitely did do some shifting, but it was still super comfortable. You're basically hovering above your seat, and it's it feels like you're kind of in this pillow of air around you. And so it was wonderful and very comfortable.
That is so cool. I mean, we all want to, live vicariously through you. What was it, all dry food that you ate, and what was the food, situation like? How did it taste, etc.?
They flew fresh food for us for the first day or so of our mission. And so we had that, and they keep it in this cooler. And the neat thing about how they protect it is that they use cold brewed coffee frozen as the ice cubes, and then as that thaws, you get to drink the coffee. And so the fresh food was fabulous. The SpaceX team gave us some wonderful food. There were these little sandwiches and bananas. My favorite, honestly, were vegetables, just different vegetables with some hummus. And I would open it, and all of these vegetables would just kind of spray out. And it was just really fun to see how food operates in that environment and the different challenges to eating. But it was also just really fun and tasted wonderful. And then after that, we move into kind of more of a camping food environment. So things like Cliff Bars, or we had tortillas with peanut butter and jelly. We would make sandwiches that way. And fruit bars, things like that. But it was provided us the sustenance we need, and it was great.
So you didn't have to only rely on like dried foods, or
no, not at all.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that would surprise some people. Let's talk about the suit a little bit. How did you like the heads-up display? How big was it?
It provided exactly the information we needed. It was placed in a spot such that when you are floating in your suit, you merely move your eyes and you can see it perfectly. The calculations they put into that on the ground were nailed. And then, it just provides you this really quick access to the critical information that you need, and gives you that extra confidence that everything your suit is performing exactly how you need it to be. And I think it's just really neat to think about that, this is the first generation of what could be more to come as SpaceX continues to iterate on their suit. And hopefully one day a version of this suit and, the heads-up display inside is walking on the moon or Mars.
Oh, that is so cool. What about the temperature in the suit? The values, some people were hearing about 92 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems pretty toasty.
In the suit, I don't actually know off the top of my head what the temperature was in the suit. But I honestly, that we were all extremely comfortable. The entire EVA, it was one of our strong remarks afterwards was that we were comfortable the whole time, like never overheated. And it provided us the correct level of protection also from the extreme temperatures that space provides. You've got extremes in the sunlight versus eclipse, and the suit provided all the protection from those extremes.
Wow. And so tell us, is your suit reusable or a one-time use? What happens now with the suit?
It's absolutely reusable. That's the neat thing about these suits that SpaceX is building, is that they can, reuse them. And I anticipate that, they're, I don't think this is the end suit. This is, an iteration of more development to come. And so they will take all the learning that they have from this mission as a part of the suit performance, the data gathered over the test matrix during the EVA, and continue to grow from that, continue to learn. And it will be so wonderful to see where it goes from here.
After wearing the suit for many, many countless hours, how many changes do you think, or concrete changes were you able to suggest?
Oh, there was tremendous development over the course of time. They started with an IVA suit, and which really doesn't have a ton of mobility. There's not really like a lot of joint action in that. And we would go in one Friday and there would be like one arm here and it's a certain version. And then we'd come back on a Monday and it would be a whole new arm.
Wow.
And SpaceX team would just work so fast to continue to iterate and like take feedback, really refine the joints, refine the mobility, refine the, every aspect of what the suit was doing to keep us safe. It was really an incredible journey to watch the SpaceX team work.
Wow. Tell me, this is another very common question. I don't dictate what they are, but for women with long hair, is there any reason not to tie it up? Does it make a difference?
You certainly could tie it up if you wanted to. I think that it didn't get in my way, so it was fine to leave it out. But I think it's also totally, you see lots of women on the International Space Station tying it up or leaving it free.
That's what I said.
Just
A
like
lot of
we
people
do
are
on our
like, yeah, they wonder if it would shed or something and get in some place. Is that not really a concern?
I mean, just like it happens on Earth, you certainly lose hairs here and there, but it was never a problem for us.
Okay. Just want to set the record straight because you have no idea how many comments I get about that. What was your most interesting continent or island to fly over?
Goodness. I think one of the striking memories for me, there were a lot. I think one was seeing the Nile River from space. It was just so pronounced and so beautiful. And seeing that, what to be such a pivotal piece of human history, and this area that holds so much history here on Earth for humanity. It was really beautiful to see it such a striking landmark from outer space.
Wow. I bet it's hard to choose, honestly.
It is hard to choose. It took me a second.
It sounds like so much of the mission was pretty seamless. Was there any, hard challenge that comes to mind or some moment that was difficult for you?
I think that really we were working very hard the entire time. Our days were incredibly action packed, and I think our goal was to accomplish our objectives in flight, and we were ultimately able to do that, between the high altitude, the spacewalk, the Starlink testing, and the science and research experiments. And I think that when I look back on that, I think what actually stands out is that we were incredibly busy and incredibly grateful to accomplish everything we set out to do.
Did you have any moments to really just take it in and sort of relax?
We certainly took moments of pause to look out the window. We were certainly action packed the whole time, but so we might be in the middle of an experiment and someone might see something. For example, there was a moment when someone caught that there was the aurora out our window, and everyone says, "Look, there's the aurora!" And then all of a sudden, four heads are slamming at the window, like looking together. Just in total awe of how beautiful our Earth is, and then it passes and then we go back to work. And so I think that there were certainly moments to really appreciate just how remarkable our universe is.
I think I've gotten goosebumps like 5 times since talking to you. It's incredible. Yeah, as far as medical challenges, what do you think is the number one that stands out to you?
I think it's really hard to say the number one. I think there's a number of them. I think space motion sickness affects 60% of people that fly to space in the first few days of space. And so if you imagine a world where you're flying 100 people on a rocket launch at once and 60 of them are throwing up, it makes you pretty non-functional as a team for at least the first few days in space. Then secondly, you've got SANS, or spaceflight associated neuroocular syndrome, and eye changes that happen as a result of extended duration microgravity exposure. And so if you imagine, a 9-month trip to Mars, and you get there and your eyesight has changed so much that you aren't able to read your procedures anymore or do the work that you need to do to live in that environment, that's another real problem. And then, dealing with this higher radiation environment that, you will be exposed to when you're out there for a long time. It's why it's important to learn what we can, do things like expose, get data from the radiation environment that we were in on this mission so that we can really better arm people as we go further out into space for longer durations of time in the years to come.
Yeah. Do you have any preliminary data from the exposure to the radiation belts that you can share with us?
Not yet. Data typically first of all, it takes some time to just get to the researchers, and then they'll need to work over the months to come to analyze it and then publish it. So, but I'll be super excited to see the results.
Yeah. Now that you've been to space, do you see yourself returning?
Oh, I would go in a heartbeat. I think that I will be, but what I really think about is that, first of all, this mission's not over. We still have a lot of debriefs to go. We have more data collection to do at the return plus 30-day time point. And then, I think big picture, I love the space industry. I love what humans are doing together to explore our universe. And I would be thrilled to just be a part of that in any way, shape, or form.
Are you two the first SpaceX employees that actually became astronauts?
Yes.
What does that mean to you to not only work for the company that's doing such amazing things, but then to be able to, transition to actually go into space?
And let me clarify, we are the first SpaceX employees to fly for SpaceX
Right.
as SpaceX engineers. And, I think that really what I think about is, that there's certainly been SpaceX employees that have been selected as NASA astronauts, for example. But I do think that what I really think about is I just hope this is just the first of many. I think we all have dreamed for the years that we've been working there. And I think we all share this. There's a very common dream of, someday that it makes sense to fly the people that are working on the spacecrafts, on the rockets, that know this hardware and software firsthand. And so, I think, I at least thought that, that was certainly a dream, but thought it was years and years away. So, incredible that it happened when it did, but I hope it's just the first of many SpaceX employees to fly to space.
Well, and it's incredible that this was a private commercial mission. Talk about, because your husband is going the NASA track, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the differences in some of that training, or maybe just, things that you're noticing as you've gone with SpaceX.
I think it's been a fascinating experience to be walking these pathways side by side. In a lot of ways, SpaceX and NASA both tackle a lot of the same development preparation tasks. You're preparing your fundamental understandings of the spacecraft. You are preparing for the unique pieces of your mission that you may need to do. For example, a spacewalk. We did a lot of training, spacewalk specific training, similar for my husband at NASA. He does a lot of time in the pool, a lot of time with the hardware and software, preparing himself to perform a spacewalk if the calling comes. But I think, there's obviously like nuanced differences in the way it's approached. So for example, at least for now, for NASA uses the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, water immersion, as a big piece of their spacewalk training. For us, SpaceX was able to develop this kind of novel suspension system immersed with our 3-dimensional capsule simulator, and we trained our spacewalk that way. And so, a lot of the fundamentals are there. There might be some pieces of the tools used to prepare that are different between the two teams, but it's great to really see it happen side by side and to learn from each other.
One last question. What is your advice to young girls that see your journey and want to be like you?
Oh goodness. I think something that stands out to me is figure out what you love and what you're good at and pursue that with a vengeance. There's a lot in life that we can't control. We can't control whether someone, selects us for a role on a mission. We can't control whether we get this job or that in a lot of ways. But what you can control is, your preparedness for any moment that comes. And I think that means, paying attention to your passions, paying attention to what you're good at, learning as much as you can, preparing as much as you can. And so, what I have seen in life is that when you do that, the rest tends to fall into place.
Into space, into place.
Into space.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for making time to do this. I know you're very busy, and I haven't seen this much interest in an interview in I don't know how long. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to answer all the questions.
It was absolutely my pleasure. I loved chatting with you. So thanks so much for your time.
Must have been pretty cool to read it in space.
It was absolutely a highlight moment for me. Kisses from Space it's a story of a mama dragon as she journeys to space and shares that journey back with her baby dragons here on Earth. And it is ultimately the story of the power of love to overcome any distance. And I co-authored this story with Carrie Vosick. It is illustrated by Andy Harkness and published by Random House. And it is a story that was born out of my desire to connect with my kids on this journey to space. And something that I think I am extra excited about this story is that all of the co-creators' proceeds, they're going to benefit St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
Wow.
The space flown copy of this book will ultimately be auctioned off to benefit St. Jude as well, because St. Jude was a big part of this mission. We believe that we can, make advances for the future, for our collective future in human spaceflight, but also address the challenges we face here on Earth today. And one of the ways we were doing that is by support of St. Jude. And so just really excited, really appreciate all the support.
Oh, it's incredible. And so noble of you guys.